There are a lot of great people in our industry, a lot of great people that represent us as hunters, but maybe none better than my guest today, Mr. Ronnie, Cuz Strickland, Mr. Mossy Oak himself. You've probably watched him on the TV screen, probably watched him on YouTube. You've probably watched him kill a lot of turkeys and a lot of deer over the years. For me, he's a guy that I watched as a kid, idolized as a kid, thought he was one of the coolest guys ever. And then when you get to meet him, you realize he is one of the greatest dudes on planet Earth. Incredibly kind, incredibly, just a good guy. He's got stories that will bring you to tears, and he's got stories that will inspire you. Today, we share some stories. We talk about his journey into the industry, kind of what he's seen change over the years, his favorite memories, some of his favorite podcasts he's ever got to do over the years. We talk about it all. Ronnie is a great dude. We talk about how he has seen the camo game change, and he gives you some tips and tricks on how to blend in and how to kill more animals. It's a phenomenal episode. I promise you, you're going to want to listen to it. This episode is brought to you by my friends over at Blocker. Mossy Oak Bottomland is one of the greatest patterns to ever exist. It's one of my favorite patterns of all time. Blocker makes a lot of great gear, and they make it in Bottomland. They make it in a lot of other cool patterns too, but Bottomland, I mean, it's just the best. Now, Blocker also has clothes for every kind of pursuit you could ever dream of going on, from freezing cold thermal coyote hunts to early season whitetails, late season whitetails, even heading out west to survive on the mountain. They've got gear. Now, the best thing about Blocker is they've got great gear that doesn't break the bank. Affordable gear. Gear that you can buy all the gear you need and still afford to go on the hunts. That's important to me. I kind of struggle with the guy who spends so much money on his camo and then can't afford to go on the hunts. What'd you buy the camo for if you can't afford to go on the hunts? So spend less money on camo and go on more hunts. With Blocker, you can do that and still get phenomenal gear for any kind of pursuit you might be going on. And again, you can get it in Bottomland. Go check out Blocker. As you shop for Christmas presents, build a Christmas list of Blocker, send it to somebody. Man, I love Blocker Outdoors. Guys, let's jump in with Mr. Cuz Strickland of Mossy Oak and hear some of the greatest stories I've ever heard.
For the true sportsman, it's more than a pastime. It's a way of life. Embrace the lifestyle of hunting, fishing, and the thrill of the wild. Live the life. Be typical.
It's not often that a new company comes along in the archery world and just absolutely changes the game. However, that is exactly what Dialed Archery did when they entered the scene. Pretty much took the archery world by storm, and for good reason. Now, if you followed me, you know my review of the Arxos. There was some things I didn't like about the Arxos. However, when the proof was introduced, here's what they did. They took all of the customer feedback. They took all of the customer feedback so well that I believe with the proof, they have created a perfect sight. They listened to what the archery world wanted and needed out of a sight, and that's what they got with the proof. It is completely redesigned. It's completely in every way. It's just a better sight. They have improved on every issue that people had with the Arxos, and they have created, in my opinion, an absolute bomb-proof sight. Completely customizable on the website. Colors, pin configuration, pin sizes, pin colors. Completely customizable. You get exactly what you want right out of the box. Guys, I would highly encourage you to go check out Dialed Archery for your next sight. You are going to get, here's what I promise you, you are going to get more yardage out of a sight tape. Now, for a guy who's relatively on the short side of a draw length, that's pretty important to me. I shoot a heavier arrow and I don't have an incredibly long draw length. So that rail giving me a little bit more out of my sight tape is something that's very important to me. However, all of the other features of the proof make a bomb-proof sight. You can throw that thing around the mountain. You can drag it through the mud. It's going to perform every single time because Dialed has created, in my opinion, with the proof, the perfect sight. Go check out dialedarchery.com for your next and your last bow sight. All right, we've got the legend himself, Mr. Mossy Oak himself, Mr. Cuz Strickland.
Yes, sir. You need to raise your bar a little bit.
Well,
you throw that word around very nicely, but I don't consider myself that. I have a lot of stick to itness, but I think that's about where it starts and ends.
You know, well, let me just share this with you. Being around the industry enough, you realize that, you know, if you're a bad person, just a bad dude, you hear about it pretty quickly. I mean, we work in a pretty small industry, and if you mess a couple people up, word gets around. And I have never in my lifetime heard anybody have anything negative to say about Cuz Strickland, which is it's great for me. I don't mean to make you feel old, but, you know, when I was a kid, we watched Cuz Strickland like that. You know, we watched him on the TV screen, and so you grew up idolizing these guys that just killed, you know, all these awesome deer and turkeys, and you know, got to wear your favorite camo pattern and work for your favorite camo pattern, and you know, you thought, man, these guys hung the moon, and then when you get to meet them and hear about them and realize they're really just great dudes, down to earth, love Jesus and kind and good people. I mean, it really means a lot to me.
Well, bless you for saying that, but you know, I am who I am, and I still do a lot of talks. I do a lot of stuff that puts me in front of a bunch of people. And to this day, I still have this same thought. Every time I get up in front of a crowd, no matter if it's, you know, 60 people or 600 or however many it is, when I look out there, I'm thinking to myself, half of these people know as much as I do about hunting. The other half probably know more. And I feel kind of driven to entertain them, because I'm telling you right now, today is no different. You ain't gonna ever know who the best hunter in the world is, because he ain't saying. And just because you see an influencer doing something while you're scrolling Instagram, and that's fine. I use social media, but it's like, man, there's so many great hunters out there. It's not intimidating. It's just, it makes me feel good, but it's like, I'm real careful not to talk down to people, because my circumstances were clearly divine intervention. I could still be the produce guy at the Kroger, and I would still be happy, but you know, God pushed me in different directions, and wow, what a ride. And I'm grateful every day I get up that some people are interested in what I got to say. So you have to be careful what you say, because people are listening, as you well know.
Yeah. And that, you know, what you just said is so true. And, you know, working in the world of Pope and Young, you know, everybody that listens knows that's my main career. And, you know, you work in that. So everybody wants to know, like, well, who's the best hunter you know? And I'm like, you've never heard of them. Like, I can promise you that. You know, it's not the guys with the TV shows. It's not you know, and everybody knows you're Chuck Adams, and you're, and Chuck, you know, definitely is up there. I mean, as one of the best hunters in the world to ever live. But most of the guys you've never even heard of. And, you know, I say that about Chuck, and I don't mean this offensive towards Chuck. He knows, you know, we've talked about this, but, you know, even Chuck is old school these days, and all these new up and coming hunters don't even really know who he is anymore. And so I think you're 100% right, man. We've talked about that a lot. You know, we'll look at the world record list, and we're like, you know, some grandpa has a world record buck in his basement, and nobody knows about it. You know, he shot that 220, 230, you know, way back in the day with his old stick and string, and it's just been on the wall ever since, you know? And, but yeah, I mean, what you said is absolutely correct. There's a lot of great hunters out there.
Yeah. You know, Chuck Jones, you know, I wasn't the guy that wanted, like, my aspirations were to go to Africa and do this and do that. one of my things on my bucket list I had to knock out, and I did, is I could, every time I opened Bow Hunter magazine or whatever it was, there was always a picture of Chuck in there, in a plaid shirt with that beanie on. And I can remember he had he would have a tag on his back. You used to have to put that tag in a plastic thing and put it on your back or your jacket or wherever it was.
Yeah.
Wisconsin and Michigan, all that. I said, I want to go hunting up there and have a tag on my back. And I did. I went up to Wisconsin like four, I think it was 4 years in a row hunting on public land. But it's like, yeah, I mean, he's probably the same age as me. He may be a little older, I don't know. But the difference in those old school guys like me or whoever, and I would never put myself in the category with Chuck Jones or Chuck Adams or the Wensels or any of those people. But the equipment was way less effective. 5-inch feathers, calf hair tabs. They were pulling off some cool stuff.
Shooting with your fingers, no rangefinders, no angle compensation.
I did it for years and still do it from time to time. I got my old E-Will bow hanging up there with a calf hair tab. I shoot it all the time because I just enjoy that. That's why I keep bow hunting. I don't have aspirations of a 180-inch deer posted on my Instagram. Look what Cuz get. I just love getting out there, and sitting with my bow, and that's why I do it. And you're right. You'll never know who the best hunter in the world is. I met a guy one time I did a turkey thing. It was packed house, but I saw this older guy come in the back there, just leaned up against the wall, coveralls on. Anyway, I made a point to go talk to him after everybody was done, and he was really country and really interesting, but I talked to him for about an hour, and I knew 10 minutes into that conversation that he had forgotten more about turkey hunting than I would ever know.
Yeah.
And nobody knew who he was, but I'm like, that kind of stuff will keep you humble.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, man. There's a guy down in Florida. Honestly, I can't even remember his name, but he's completed the turkey slam. I think he said 113 times. So, he's got more turkey slams than him. You probably know who he is. But again, he's not a TV host. Doesn't have a podcast, doesn't write articles, doesn't, compete in turkey calling competitions. He's just out there doing it and he loves it. And, those guys are really what I'm trying to get more like, if I'm being honest. I made the declaration a couple episodes ago on the podcast that whatever buck I kill this year, I don't care if it's a 175-inch buck. I'm not even going to post a picture of it. I don't even want to take pictures. I mean, my pictures, just for me to have, but I don't want to stage photos. And I just want to enjoy the moment with the deer and not worry about like, well, I got to turn his head this way to make him look bigger. I got to wipe the blood off, tuck the tongue back in. I got to make sure the bow is seen. I got to make sure the camo patch is seen. Like, I just want to hunt, dude, and enjoy it.
That's very important. The last buck I killed with a bow, I killed 3 does last year, but the year before that, whenever it was, the last buck I killed with my bow was it was an 8-point. I don't know what it scored. I don't score here, but it wasn't that big. But I was very proud of it because it was the last day of January. And man, there's no telling what all that deer dodged and weaved and all this kind of stuff. And I ran an air through it. When I got up to it, I just knelt down and took a picture of the deer laying in the leaves. And I posted that picture. I wasn't in it and all that. And I said, man, that one right there is a trophy. Because I got him within 20 yards and stayed hidden when there's no leaves and all that kind of stuff. But that's the way it is. I made a post. I use social media for different reasons. None of my stuff's monetized, nothing. Facebook's pretty big, blah, blah, blah. And I made a post because I was just scrolling, looking at all these giant deer. And that's okay. I mean, killing a giant deer, getting on a big one and hunting it all year, that's awesome. Everybody dreams of killing that giant deer, but I'm always scared. Like with my grandsons, I don't want them to hunt for just that reason.
Right.
So I posted a picture. It's been 2 or 3 weeks ago now. The only deer that's in my office. I'm looking at it right now, and it's a 4-point. And it was the first buck my wife killed, who was not a hunter. And I took her like 6 seasons. and I'd have deer in front of her, and she'd get to that point she wouldn't pull the trigger. She had to just find her own path. Well, for some reason this one came out. We were down at Big Creek Lodge, and she shot it, and it meant more to me than it ever did to her or anybody else. And I posted a picture of that and said, look, here, this one's not very big. It's a 4-point blah, 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 but it's a trophy in every sense of the word. And that post went crazy. And people like, man, I'm glad to hear you say that and all that. But it's like your fondest hunting memories, especially for people my age, even my grandsons, are those early ones where you weren't thinking about anything, but man, I hope I see a deer.
Yeah.
So, and you know, deep down, I think that worm's turning a little bit. You know, it used to be such a big deal. I killed a giant deer in 1981. And I didn't know about Boone and Crockett, none of that stuff. I mean, it was a giant. Scored 209 and 6/8.
Oh.
Double drop tines, double brow. It was stupid. And back then, there wasn't a lot of deer that size hitting the ground.
Yeah.
And I had one bad experience after another with that big deer. And this was way before it got real popular. And it kind of, you know, it just kind of set my mind in a tone where, man, we're just getting way too wrapped up in those antlers. Because here's the deal. The guy driving the gravel truck or the lady checking groceries down at the Piggly Wiggly there, they probably hunt. They're not going to see a 180-inch deer. That doesn't mean they don't have the right to be as passionate about it as you and I are. And I like inclusion more than exclusion. And just how big the deer is just kind of a bonus. Not saying I might go this afternoon. I'll be sitting there, man, hope a big one shows up. If it don't, I'm going to enjoy every second I'm out there. So,
yeah. Well, and that's, you know, I went on a little tangent a couple episodes ago about, you know, just our perspective as hunters and how we view things. And, you know, I'll be honest, this year has been frustrating to say the least. Again, if you've listened to this show, you know that I'm the lead pastor of a church that's being planted right now. And it's a ton of work. You know, it takes up every ounce of effort that I've got. But also then my wife tears her ACL. And so the surgery is smack dab in the middle of the rut. And, you know, I'm taking care of a wife who can't drive because it's her right knee. She can't drive, got to drive her around, you know, got to take care of her. And I have been going out and, you know, I actually shot a buck, last Sunday. So, 8 days ago, shot it right in the shoulder though with, you know, I decided to use a recurve and shot it right in the shoulder and never found that buck. And, you know, it's just been that kind of season for me. And, you know, as we wind down, we're getting close to Christmas time, New Year's time, and, you know, getting busy with holidays. And, you know, it dawned on me that, hey, this might be the first time in a long time I don't kill a buck. And, at first I was kind of bummed, you know, I'm kind of like, this sucks, dude. Like, this is miserable. But again, you know, going back to that perspective thing, and I don't mean to harp on that, but that's just that's where I'm at in my journey as an outdoorsman. So that's why you keep hearing about it. Going back to that perspective thing, you know, cause I'm never going to stand before the Lord on Judgment Day and say, God, but remember 2025, I didn't kill a buck. Like, that year sucked, you know, I didn't even get to kill a buck. That's never going to happen, you know? And I mean, Lord, and my kids are grown and, you know, and I'm taking them out hunting, grandchildren out hunting. I'm never going to look back and say, yeah, but 2025, I never killed a buck. Like, it's good. I'm going to move on, you know, I'm going to keep going and I'm going to keep hunting and just enjoying it. And I don't want people to get caught up in the stress of having to put a buck on the ground. Like, sometimes people stress about that way too much.
Oh yeah. They get all bent out of shape about it. It doesn't affect me. I went, you know, if there's such thing as a hunting prime, when I was in mine, I didn't get to hunt much at all because I was lugging those big cameras around. I produced TV, you know, me and some other guys. And so, I mean, I went a lot of seasons where I personally didn't kill a buck. I mean, that sounds like an excuse. Well, it's not, because it was so much work. At one point, Mossy Oak had 5 television shows we're producing. Let me tell you, and 3 of them were 52 weeks a year. Yeah. And you think about how much footage you need. So from October the 1st till the end of January, we never missed any opportunity to go film, even if it was an encounter or something like that. So I got over that. I got to kill a buck. Here's the deal. There's always going to be somebody bigger, badder, and better than you are. And I picked up on the fact early on that I'm like you, my best memories of all this aren't going to have anything to do with antlers.
Right.
And the other day, Lauren, who produces our podcast, Fistful of Dirt, she wanted to interview the grandsons who are basically grown. One's in college, he's 19 or 20, and Matt's 17 and Cranky's 13. But she wanted to do a podcast asking them about me, because I could do that, but they wouldn't be honest talking to me about me. So I said, well, that's a cool idea. And she said all they talked about on all these hunting trips we've been on had nothing to do with the hunt. It's like, remember that flat tire we had on the interstate and that place we went to eat and all that? That tells you all you need to know about hunting season right there. And it's sometimes people can't see the forest for the trees. I've never had that problem, but I think the worm's turning a little bit. And another thing on these podcasts right there, you'll find out if you study them and which ones do the best. What people want is stories, and everybody's got a good story. You just got to pull it out of them. But very few, if any of them, are about this giant deer that I cut his track and this year, and I found him on this. They just want to be relatable. So I think that worm's turning a little bit.
So I want to ask you kind of, about your start in the industry and kind of who you looked up to and that sort of thing. Before I do, you mentioned Chuck's beanie. This is one of those stories that I I tell people all the time. Chuck's famous for that beanie, and I had a dad who idolized him, and so he always had the magazines open to Chuck's articles, and I just remember that green beanie, like as a kid, just that green beanie. And he came to me in an event one time. He gave me and my boss at Pope and Young a green beanie signed Chuck Adams. And I thought that was the coolest thing in the world. So I put it in my office, slid it like over the top of one of his books, and just kind of kept it in my office. Well, I had this guest preacher come into town one time to preach for me, and he was a big Chuck Adams fan. Kind of grew up in that same age group as my dad, and so kind of that Chuck was the man, Chuck was the king. And so, he was just drooling over that beanie all weekend long. And so finally I said, well, hey man, why don't you take that beanie? I'll get another one from Chuck. And in my mind, I thought, well, Chuck's famous for the beanie. He probably hands those out like water. He probably signs those and cashes them out. Yeah. And so I give him that beanie, and he sent me a picture like the very next day when he got home, put it in like a glass shadow box on his wall or whatever. And, and so I called Chuck and I'm like, hey, I gave one of my buddies, he's a preacher, man. I wanted to bless him. I gave him your beanie, and could I get another one? And he said, Dylan, I've only given out 3 of those in my entire life. Those 2 to you, and one other guy. And I was like, oh crap. And he's like, I'll send you one more. He's like, but don't ever give this one away. And I'm like, I won't, I promise. I didn't know they were that special. But I say all that to say this. I had guys that I looked up to. I had guys that I aspired to be like, and yourself, Chuck, of course, old Waddy, which now that I've got to know him, he's just a dumb old redneck. But I had those guys that like when I was a kid, like, man, that's who you want to be. Who was that for you? Like, who did you kind of look up to like that as you kind of started in the industry?
Yeah. Well, in the bow hunting world, for me, it was the Wensels. Gene and Barry Wensel were just, and of course, Chuck Adams. I didn't have aspirations to be Chuck Adams, but the Wensels were just, man, I was just enthralled with them because they were, at the time, they're from PA. They moved out to Montana, and they were hunting on the Milk River and stuff like that. And anything I could find about the Wensels, that's who I kind of, and there was a bunch of them out there, Pete Shepley, all those guys, Fred Bear. I got Fred Bear to sign a picture for me at a show one time, and that one there is framed in my little, we call it the man den out there. And I've never been a recurve or a traditional guy. I'm a terrible shot with it. The first compound bow I got, and it had a pin on it, I was like, oh, thank you. Jesus, I believe I can kill something with this thing now. But the Wensels were just it for me. And later in life, I got to meet them and share hunting camp with them several times. And it was just, and I was like, I can remember sitting around a campfire with them up there at the Milk River, and it was so cold you couldn't breathe. But I remember looking up and going, thank you, God, for whatever reason you felt like you should bless me to be here and share a camp with Gene and Barry Wensel. I am certainly not worthy of that, but it was like, for me, it was the Wensels. And I just love the way, first off, they had the first deer hunting video out there. The Primos, The Truth, which ended up being a cult movie, was one thing. And I had a big part of that, shot all that stuff. But the bow hunting October whitetails, I don't know how many times I watched that thing over and over and over again. It's one of the things that spurred me to get better. It's like, man, they're pulling that camera up in a tree and doing all this. So for me, it was the Wensels, and they're still a little active, but sadly, like you say, younger people don't know who Chuck Adams or Gene and Barry Wensel are, or any of those people.
And honestly, they only know, they know the name of Fred Bear only because of Bear Archery. They don't even know the real history there. They don't, and again, they know the Pete Shepley because of PSE, but they don't even know the true history there. The rich amount of moving the needle to get the archery industry where we're at. You take out the Pete Shepleys and the Fred Bears, where would we be today? Like, I mean, they pushed this industry into what it is, and they worked their tails off to create what it is today. And and I had the pleasure to meet Pete. Unfortunately, it was Pete is he's kind of losing it. He's not all together there anymore. And so unfortunately I got to meet him after that. But man, those guys getting to hear those stories, man, and hearing, the work that went into creating what we have today is incredible.
Just relentless. And those people love to hear those stories. I had Dan Moultrie on Moultrie Feeders, and nobody knows what he went through. I mean, and his story is amazing. It hadn't got that much to do with archery, but he went and got like 5 credit cards, maxed them all out, buying metal and all that with this big idea. And when he finally got the profit stream going where he could cover payroll and all that, he spent years dealing in politics, trying to get, feeders legal in this state and that state and this state and that. And you have to wonder, do people have that kind of drive? And what Fred Bear did, with manufacturing of bows and broadheads and all that stuff. But there was always somebody in front of you, and you always need to kind of look back and say, man, if it wasn't for that one, I don't know where we would be. But I never lose that. It's pretty amazing to me because I'm old enough now where I saw all that in real time. People talk about the hunting industry now. Well, there was no hunting industry when I got started. I kind of watched it all together. And
that's cool.
No different. Yeah, no different from Toxie Hayes or Will Primos. I know what they went through. I was part of the Mossy Oak thing. I was part of the Primos thing, and there was no money, and it's like, when we first started trying to sell Mossy Oak, Toxie was doing pretty much everything. Bill Sugg, who's still the president of the company, he handled Mississippi, and Bob Dixon, God rest his soul, handled Alabama, and I was selling everywhere else. And I can remember stopping at a payphone, or a bunch of them, and I'd call Toxie and say, hey, dude, I just sold $300 worth. He's like, you're kidding. No, I'm not. And we used to have contests to see who could stay in the cheapest motel. And I never lost that, by the way. I stayed in a hotel in Yeehaw Junction in Florida for $9 one time. But it was like everybody looks at what's going on now, but they didn't see all that back then. The relentless pursuit and just believing in what you were doing and having so much fun and you put it in God's hands. and see where it goes, because it certainly was never about the money. I can promise you that.
Let's be honest. How many times did you cheat on the hotel though and say like, "Hey, I'm going to pay this amount, but give me a receipt for this amount"?
Never had to do that. Look, the $9 one. This guy had a sign outside the motel rooms, $10, and I turned around, went back, said I can win that. Walked in, and he was behind the counter. The bell rang when I opened the door, like Mayberry RFD or something. And he had his head behind a newspaper, and I said, $10 for a room. And he pulled that newspaper down, looked at me, and said, okay, $9, because it was like 10 o'clock at night. But it's like, I tell that story all the time just because people don't understand, what everybody went through back then. And like Will Primos, he was running their family was in the restaurant business, and he was running 2 restaurants. He never had any time to go hunting. And if you'll look back on that first Truth video, I think he was on 1 or 2 hunts, and the rest of it was me taking people. And it was a different day. But thank goodness there's relentless people out there, and it's been a fun ride for me. I can tell you that.
You know what? And I guess this never dawned on me until just now when you were talking. I bash on Mississippi a lot. Being an Arkansas guy, I got to take my shots when I can. And it's never dawned on me how rich the hunting industry flourished from Mississippi.
Yeah. Primos and Mossy Oak, Preston Pittman's down here, B&M Poles. There's a lot of people down here.
Yeah.
Millennium Tree Stand. I mean, there's some hardcore sportsmen down here who have been in that business for a long time. And you can say what you want. I'm not saying it because I was a cameraman, but there was a lot of influence, from Mississippi. I mean, I can't go anywhere this day, and somebody's going to bring up, hey, I saw you in your long underwear pulling that deer out of the water for Toxie, or I saw this on the Truth, that's usually older people saying that, and we didn't know it at the time, but all that stuff, we never, I'll say this with pride. I produced Hunting the Country for 20 years, 20 to 20 seasons, something like that. Ratings were really high. So I don't know how many episodes that relates to, but we never once in any episode scored a deer on that. And I learned that mainly because we weren't chasing big deer. We were chasing the experience. And I can remember when Hunting the Country moved from TNN, which was the biggest, greatest network we ever had, the Nashville network. All they had was rodeo, NASCAR, country music, hunting and fishing. That was it. Huge network. And when they sold it to Spike, we moved to ESPN. And I had to go up to Bristol, Connecticut to meet with the people from ESPN because this hunting, they were going to bring some hunting shows on, and they were laying some guidelines out. And we argued back and forth because I was looking at these guys in these 3-piece suits going, you people don't know anything about hunting. And they were looking at me going, you don't know anything about TV. And we were probably both 1,000% correct. But in the midst of all this, the guy that was kind of in charge of the meeting, he kind of slammed his hand on the table and he said, "Cuz, give me a reason to root for the person." And he went into all these hunting shows that comes on, you're in a tree stand, blah, blah, blah. He said, why was you in that tree? Who picked it? And he said, stories will never go out of style. Great cinematography and stories and characters will always be popular. And man, he's correct. Because we kind of concentrated on stories. And I had a bunch of young guns here running those cameras with no host, going to hunt with strangers. And I'd say, look, if your hunter is not interesting, focus on the guide. If the guide don't want to talk to you, go to the closest town and give me some history, because you can tell a story, you just got to figure it out. And that's what I think that's why the brand has done so well. We've never focused on making somebody famous because they were killing the most deer or the biggest deer or the most ducks or the best turkey hunter. It was about just kind of celebrating God's creation and the habitat and the terrain and all that. Because guess what? If we didn't have that, nobody would be having a podcast or a boat company or anything else.
Yeah. And you're 100% right. And that's why I think podcasts have done so well, because it's all about the story. I mean, they don't have to, you know, they're not watching and consuming you shooting the deer. They're just listening to the stories. And, you know, they want to hear, the emotion in the story, and they want to hear the, you know, that's why, like, if a dude, you know, I've had dudes share stories and they start crying, you know, cause it was the last hunt with their grandpa or whatever. And, you know, towards the end of their story, there never comes a time where there's sorry for crying on the show, man. And I'm like, dude, no, like, you've got me crying, bro. Like, that's what we're here for, is to hear these stories and to relive those moments, and to, you know, to be in that with you, and to relive that with you. That being said, looking back over all your years in the industry, and producing all those shows and seeing all those animals hit the ground and taking all these people on hunts, what is the story that sticks out to you the most as being like, man, that was special?
Oh, there's so many. I'm going to tell you one about this podcast first. And which really struck home with me, because I'm an older guy, and I didn't really understand social media. It took me forever, to get a Facebook and all this kind of stuff. And it was 5 years ago, Lauren, my youngest daughter, who produces our podcast, she came to me, she said, "Pop, you need a podcast." I'm like, "Okay, what's a podcast?" I actually did not know. And back then, and you've seen this growth, back then, this is 5 years ago. We just celebrated over 300 episodes, never missed one. But there wasn't that many. And, we're all in this wilderness category, and that includes biking and camping and all that stuff. So I was like, we did 5, and she's going to roll them out there. And I said, "Lauren, nobody's going to listen to this." She said, "Pop, you have no idea." Well, fast forward 3 years later, this would have been 2 years ago, I was at the NWTF show, and I'm sitting there with, I think Toxie was there, maybe Will. There was a long line. We were signing hats. I'm kind of a big deal with the turkey crowd for whatever reason. I'm sure it's the truth video. But anyway, I look down this line. There's this kid in there. He's probably 8 or 9, may have been 10. And he's by himself. I saw his mother kind of walk over there, but he finally made it up there. And he's just looking at me, and he said, "Mr. Cuz," and he had something for me to sign. He said, "I love those podcasts you do." And I went, "Really?" And he said, "Yes, sir." I said, "What do you like?" He said, "Man, I love them hunting stories. I ain't got any." And I thought I was going to start crying. But anyway, I got him hooked, and he found turkey hunting on YouTube. And we got him a hunt set up and all this kind of stuff. He ended up killing a turkey that spring. But it's like, you know what? People are listening, and we're so blessed to be able to. My dad wasn't a big hunter. He was a big fisherman, but we were outdoors, so I had that. Not everybody has that. But it's like to have a vehicle like that that people listen to, and yours is the same way. I get it all the time. Man, I can have my kids in the car or the truck, and they don't have to review or preview our podcast. There's no, foul language and stuff like that. People are hungry for that. Yeah. Now, if you want to know the best hunting story ever, first off, it's going to take a minute, and I'll have to take my family out of that, because nothing compares to my wife's first deer, them grandkids killing their first turkey and all that. But this hunt, and I don't know if you've heard me talk about it, it's a kid. His name's Ryan Welch. And back when they were first starting the Catch a Dream Foundation, which Catch a Dream is like Make-A-Wish, but Make-A-Wish won't do consumptive events. They don't go fishing or hunting or anything. So Catch a Dream was started for, grievously ill kids who wanted to go on whatever. And when it was just getting started, I was able to go on the first hunt for Catch a Dream. It was a kid from Hattiesburg, Mississippi, and he wanted to go deer hunting. And man, you talking about God floating over your head. We were in Alabama, and it was 80 degrees in December, and it just wasn't going to happen. East wind for 3 days in a row, and I had a spot down in the bottom that I knew we could kill a deer, and then finally the wind changed, and this kid killed a deer. But the guy that we started Catch a Dream for was in honor of Bruce Brady, who was an outdoor writer. And I was with his son, Bruce Jr., and we sat down on that afternoon. This ain't the story. This is leading up to it. Yeah. We sat down on that deer stand in late December, probably 2:30, 2:45. And as soon as we're getting in, I had built a blind out of it. It was crazy good. And we got there and got real still. and a turkey gobbled. Now you got to stop and think. This is Alabama. It's in the afternoon. It's 80 degrees and it's in December. And that turkey gobbled loud and clear. And Bruce turned to me and said, "Dad's here." And I went, "Yeah, you got that right." 20 minutes later, we had a nice 8-point on the ground. But that's how Catch a Dream got started.
That's
anyway,
cool.
Yeah, down the road, I get a call, and people have to send in a letter about, what they want to do. And this came from a guy named Roger Welch. And he had a son who was 8 or 9 at the time. His name was Ryan, had a malignant brain tumor. And cutest little kid you ever seen. And his deal was he wanted to go turkey hunting with either me or Will Primos. And I thought it was just a joke at first. I'm like, who has that as a wish? Anyway, it was legit. and we called and we set the hunt up. I remember going to Toxie because there wasn't any money. And I told Toxie, and I read the letter to him. He said, "Make it happen." I said, "Okay." I said, "Look, I ain't hunting him out here around, Tibby Bottom. I'm taking this kid to Texas because Ray Charles can kill a turkey in Texas, and he's whatever it takes." So I set the hunt up in Texas. And I pick him up at the airport. It's Roger, the dad, and Ryan, who's still out of it. I don't know how long he'd been post-surgery, but he was real quiet, having trouble focusing with his eye. I mean, it was going to be a test. And then the little brother at the time, Riley. So we get to the hunting camp. He's not talking much on the ride to the hunting camp. We went to a place called the Richards Ranch. They got Rio turkeys. And we got there. I had a little 20 gauge, and I had some kind of some light loads. I had a guy hand load, like 2 3/4 turkey loads. And so I knew the turkey was going to have to be close. But anyway, when Ryan, I said, "You need to come shoot the gun." Well, he was right-handed, but he was trying to aim with his left eye because his right eye still hadn't come back from that surgery. I said, "That ain't going to work." So I took him. I went in and called, and I found I think it was Bass Pro. They just opened up. And I said, "I got to go get an aim point or something that he can kind of lean back on." And the guys, I told him what was going on. He said, "Yeah, I'll wait on you." He said, "Hurry, because I don't know what time they close." Anyway, so I get the gun and I'm telling him, I said, "Hey, I'm going to run back to wherever it was, Dallas. It's about an hour and a half." And Ryan tugged my shirt. He said, "Can I ride with you?" And I said, "Sure, let's go ask your dad." And his dad handed me a sheet of paper, had all these things written on it to watch out for. He doesn't have good balance. He doesn't have any depth perception. You got to watch curves. I said, "Hey, I got it." So we drive all the way back, and Ryan's with me, and I let him do a little shopping while they're mounting I think it was the aim point we put on there. And we stop on the way back at the Whataburger. I pull in there, and his dad says he's not going to eat anything. He's been eating these shakes and stuff. He's got zero appetite. And I said, "Look, I'm going to have to go in here and get me something to eat." And he went in with me, and I ordered the same thing I always do, number 2, mustard, mayonnaise, and pickles only, and got a chocolate shake. And he looked me in the eye and said, "I think I'll have the same." I said, "Okay." And he ate every bite. We get back to the camp, shot the gun.
That's because nobody passes up Whataburger, dude.
Yeah. And I told his dad, I said, "Man, did you say a great old big cheeseburger?" He said, "No, he didn't." I said, "Roger, he ate every bite. I watched him." Well, Ryan's kind of coming around a little bit. And anyway, shot the gun. We got that through the headlights in a cardboard box at, midnight. We shot the gun. He can hit with it. So we get up the next morning, it's raining. And I'm talking about raining. We went anyway. And except for stopping for a biscuit around 11 o'clock, we pretty much hunted all day. Didn't hear anything. Didn't see much. It was raining. And I was pretty disappointed. Go back to the cabin, the ranch. Dad standing there underneath the thing. "Y'all get a turkey?" "No." Got up the next morning, raining again. And let me tell you something. You get rained out 2 or 3 days in a row in Texas, that's bad luck. And I'm telling you, this happened, and it just kept going on, kept raining. And I would pull him. We'd sit down. I got to the point, so I'm just going to go sit by a feeder. I mean, the turkeys weren't gobbling. They were wet. They were in a bad mood. It was kind of cold. And anyway, I would sit down and pull him back against my chest, and he'd pick that gun up and just hold it like that, like a rock. So I started calling him. I said, "Man, you the rock." And anyway, long story short, the last morning, it would mist and rain. We're driving back to the cabin. I mean, it's over. And I know them people have been looking at me like, "Hey, you're cuz from the Truth video, and you can't get a turkey killed in Texas." That's all that was going through my mind. anyway, the guy, our land guide, we're driving back. He said, "Cuz, you see that?" And I was looking through the windshield up at some blue sky coming. And I was like, "Yeah, I see that. That's about right. We're leaving now." He said, "No, over to the right. Look down there, and there's two strutters down in these mesquites." Long story short, went down there, boom, he got his turkey. And I'll tell you, I've never felt like that ever.
That is
got back
cool.
his dad. Oh, it was amazing. Well, I got to be friends with The Rock and his dad and his mom. They would email me all the time, just back and forth, just kind of keeping up with what's going on. And a year or two later, I get a letter from his mom. And it's fairly thick. And I was like, oh, God, I'm not opening that. Because I've been emailing with him back and forth. I'm not opening. That's a handwritten letter. And I let it on my desk. I just let it sit there for a long time because I just knew that it was bad news in there. And I'm telling you, finally, God just got tired of hearing me complain and kicking rocks and just told me to open the letter. And I did. And it was a bunch of pictures of him in his baseball uniform playing Little League baseball. And on his back, instead of his name, he had The Rock. And it was the coolest letter ever. And I was like, it was like, I've never had a hunt like that. 20 years later to the week, I took them all back to Texas, and he killed a turkey within 500 yards of where he killed that first one 20 years ago.
That is cool.
That's a pretty deep story, and I could go, there's a lot of stuff in there, but it's like, golly, now that's a hunting memory right there. And I just talked, we text back and forth to this day. He sent me a text this morning with a picture of a deer's brother killed. And I'm like, how cool is that? So that's so probably cool. My favorite hunting story. So
that is super cool, man. I mean, yeah. I don't think there's anything that can top that, dude. I really don't.
Yeah, I've had so many great experiences with, we do so much with wounded vets. I've been doing that hunt down in Florida for 16 years now and had so many experiences down there that are phenomenal. And, just seeing people maybe not at that level overcome stuff, but just hunting is their refuge, and it's their quiet time. And, and I saw a guy getting on somebody the other day talking about he went hunting on Sunday because he feels he's close to God. And guy says, you need to go to church. Well, you probably do. But look, anytime somebody feels like they're close to God, you shouldn't say anything if that's where they feel that. And a lot of people take refuge in that. And they don't care if they kill a giant deer or not. I can promise you Ryan Welch didn't care. The Rock, he didn't care if he killed a turkey or not. He was just hanging out, having the best time of his life. I had all the pressure on me, but it's like, people got to understand that it's way more to it than all that.
Have you ever had him on the podcast?
I did. I did a podcast with him and his dad. Big brother, Riley, who was a little tiny fella at the time. Now he's like 6'4", 6'5". But I had Ryan and his dad on the podcast, and I think it's you can go to Fistful of Dirt. I think it's number 58. And I interviewed both of them. It was kind of early back in the day, but I was like, what a cool story. And I kind of let them tell the story. But I speak at a lot of churches. I do all these wild game suppers and stuff. And I'll tell the pastor, and look, I'm not going to get up there and quote scripture for 45 minutes or an hour. I'm going to talk about divine intervention. I got a lot of stories where I can see. Yeah. And I always end with that, with the story of Ryan the Rock Welch. And usually there's not a dry in the house, but it's all true. Toxic accuses me of embellishing stuff from time to time, but that went down, and I'll say it went down for a reason. Now Catch a Dream's huge. They've just done hundreds and hundreds of kids fishing trips and elk hunts and all that. It's just what a special organization.
Yeah, that's really special, man. Guys, there are a lot of names that you can trust in the archery world. However, not many stick out as much as the name Lancaster Archery. Guys, if you've been around archery or bow hunting at all, you've probably heard of Lancaster. Why? That's because they're experts, and that's because they're your one-stop shop for all things archery. I've never needed something and not found it at Lancaster. I've also been able to find reviews and tips using the product that I needed that Lancaster had. Guys, Lancaster is phenomenal. They are experts in the trade. They know the equipment because they use the equipment. And you can pretty much get anything you've ever needed archery related at lancasterarchery.com. You can also learn about the products you need on their YouTubes, in their videos, on their social media. You can also get tips about how to use the products. Guys, Lancaster is a phenomenal one-stop shop. And here's what I'll tell you. Sometimes you gotta be mindful of who you're taking information from. You don't have to worry about it at all when it comes to Lancaster. I put full faith in the guys over at Lancaster. They know the products. They sell the products. They give you advice on the products. They give you support on the products. You can call and ask them anything. They'll get you lined out. They'll sell it to you, and then they'll support you even after you buy it and you need help figuring it out. Guys, go check out lancasterarchery.com for everything you need archery related. None of my stories turn out that cool, but I've had the opportunity to take some kids hunting, and kids that struggle with disabilities, and I'm like, I don't know, man, you want to do this with a bow? Like, I don't know this is gonna happen, like I don't. But they're so driven to work at it, and they're so driven, to do it, and it always turns out more special than any other hunt you go on. And I've got this friend named Coda. And, he's probably 18, 19 now. But struggles with some disabilities, and, he really wanted to go bow hunting. And I just thought, well, let's get you a bow. And we got him a little Bear Legit and got him out back shooting and got him good. And, but I still wanted him to take the crossbow. I'm like, why don't we take your crossbow, buddy? Like, it's really hard. It's really hard to do this. I mean, it's not an easy thing to do. He's like, no, I want to take the compound. And I'm like, all right, well, let's do it. And so, my buddy, Lane Green, and him, we took him out to a spot, with a big enclosed blind. So, Coda's not real good at being quiet. He's my biggest fan, so I know he's going to listen to this. He's not real good at being quiet. So I'm like, I need a fully enclosed blind. And, we're going to have to do this the right way. And sure enough, dude, night one, we have this awesome buck. I mean, he's probably 140-inch buck come out.
Oh,
and he's coming right at us, and he's facing, he's walking straight at us 30 yards. Coda's like, can I shoot him now? I'm like, no, like, just let him come in, dude. He's coming, like, it's fine. And I had ducked down like below the window so I could just like peek and kind of direct him, open the window and all right, draw your bow back, and kind of move him into position and stuff. And at this point, the buck's at 20 yards. And so the window's open, and I'm like, trying to, and I go to push him just to turn his body just a little bit. I wanted him to square up to the window. And so I put my hand right on his sides to kind of, hey, Coda, turn this. And buddy, as soon as I touched him, he goes, woo, woo. Oh. And that deer takes off bolt.
Oh,
and I'm like, what are you doing, dude? Like, why did you just laugh? And he's like, you touched me in my tickle spot. And I'm like, Coda,
bless
dude.
his heart.
And he said, and all Coda says, oh man, we was close that time. And I'm like,
yeah.
I'm like, yeah, we were close.
That's okay. He'll have that memory forever. God bless you for trying that.
So it gets to late season, and I'm like, well, we can't shoot a buck. It's doe season only. And I'm like, let's, I said, Coda, man, with it late season, we got winter wheat everywhere, dude. Like it's going to be really hard to get one in bow range just because there's, they can be anywhere feeding in this field. And there's nothing to say they're going to come to this spot. I said, so would you we can take your bow. But I said, if we take a rifle, I almost guarantee you can shoot a deer tonight. Like, I've got this place where winter wheat everywhere. You might see 40 deer in a sit. And I said, so if you'll take a rifle, I promise you will kill one. And, he waits until we're walking out there and he says, man, I've never shot a rifle before. And I'm like, oh, Coda, like what? And so I'm kind of prepping him. And I said, now, Coda, as soon as we get to the top of this hill, the top of the hill up here, we're in Kansas, so it's not, it's not a real hill. But I said, as soon as we, get to the peak of this wheat field. I said, seeing down into these trees, we might see deer right there. I said, so if we do, I'm going to drop these shooting sticks and you just get down on the rifle and I'll kind of walk you through it. And sure enough, we get to the top of that hill and there's 4 or 5 does right there outside the tree line. And I'm like, well, there they are, buddy. Like, get ready. And so I dropped the sticks and they're 200 yards, a little over 200 yards. And this kid's never shot a rifle. And, when they saw us, they didn't leave, but they kind of just started working into the tree line. And so he's shooting into the trees now, 215 yards now. And I'm like, God. And so I'm like kind of walking him through it. And I had told his dad, I said, why don't you get your rifle? Like, and you just be ready to shoot. And, just in case. And honestly, I kind of told his dad, I'm like, if you guys both shoot, we're not going to know who hit it, who didn't. Like, we'll just, and, anyways, so, and his dad had shot guns, but never hunted before. So this was new to him too. And, I said, all right, I'm going to, like, Coda gets on him and I'm, kind of walking him through it and slowly pull the trigger. And I start counting down. I say 3, I didn't even get the 2 out of my mouth. And dude, I'm telling you what, at 215 yards in the trees, he smoked that old gal. And
really?
She made 2 big old jumps and just crashed. And he is ecstatic. He's losing his mind.
I bet.
The first words out of his mouth were, can we call Waddell? And I'm like, no, we can't call Waddell. And so I told him, I said, well, Cody, your dad, he's wanting to shoot one too. I said, so let's go get in the blind just like we was going to. And we'll take care of your deer after that. And poor Coda, man, that doe fell probably 60 yards from our blind. And so he's sitting there the entire time just looking at her. And he's like, dude, she hasn't moved. And I'm like, yeah, she's dead, man. He's like, she's right there. And all he wants to do is go get that doe. And I'm like, Coda, let's just hang tight. Let's let your dad shoot one. And sure enough, we're seeing deer the whole night. His dad shoots one. And so we got him and his dad a doe in the late season and doubled up, man.
That's awesome.
It was a fun a night I'll never forget. And I had him on the show to tell that story and I had to stop him when he said, you touched me in my tickle spot. I'm like, hey, don't say that. Like, don't say I took you out to the woods and touched your tickle spot, man. Like, let's just say I touched you where you're ticklish and you just laughed. Like, we got to reword that a little bit, but no, it was special, man. And he's still all the time, he works as it's the I want to say cute, but again, he's 18, 19, so he might get mad at me for that. But it's the cutest thing ever. He's the crossing guard at my kid's school. So every morning I see him, I'll roll the window down and yell something at him, and he's out there holding his sign, letting the kids cross. It's cute, but those
awesome.
types of stories mean everything.
That's a special kind of memory right there. That's better than a 160-inch deer.
Any day of the week.
Yeah, on any day of the week. That's right. So
any day of the week. But just like you were talking about, man, like even hunts we go on ourselves now. I'm getting to the point in my journey as a sportsman where it's like, man, let's just make better memories. Like let's stop trying to kill the biggest deer and let's make better memories. And so this year I shot a doe first hunt of the year and I had decided, I'm like, what would be really cool is if I just still hunt my way through this property, kind of spot and stalk deer and shoot on my recurve. And I shot a little 90-pound doe. But dude, you could hear me shouting 3 counties over because I had, crawled up to this doe and shot her. And I'm like, man, that was such a cooler experience than if you're just sitting in a tree over a feeder and a 180 comes out. Like, the experience is what it's all about. And that's why I've challenged people, to try different things. Like, even if it's going to be harder, try not hunting from a tree stand or a ground blind. Try just, sitting on the ground and having a deer come within 20 yards of you, just on the ground, and try using a decoy and try a bow mounted decoy and stalking up on a buck. Like those types of experiences, although you've killed bigger deer, but again, you were sitting in a tree over a feeder and it came out. Like, challenge yourself to try different things and say, you know what, this year I'm going to do it this way and just try to learn something new. And man, usually those hunts mean more to you.
That's right. And it's again, it's so easy to get caught up. And I learned another valuable lesson. I was on the board of directors for the QDMA, which is now the National Deer Association. But I kind of helped them a little bit with their first. They have a field to fork program, and they would go to these farmers markets and they would be cooking venison and stuff. And this is some different this is not your normal crowd that follows hunting shows and stuff. People were interested in that. Man, I would love to be able to know how to do that. It was all about protein with them, wanting to know where it came from. Anyway, the first hunt they did, it was a very diverse crowd. And I was part of it, and they were using crossbows and stuff like that. And there was, people there with purple hair and nose rings and stuff. But, once they were in hunting camp, it was all about that protein. They just wanted their deal was they didn't have an issue with killing a deer. Their issue was with how to deal with it. They could see turkey hunting because you can throw it over your shoulder and walk out. You have one for Thanksgiving. Big deal on a deer hunt. But it just goes to show you there's so much low hanging fruit out there. If you will just if you'd make it, here's the deal. And I know people complain, man, this public land hunting is getting out of hand, blah, blah, blah. But it's like, if you look at hunting license sales, we're not doing that great. It's
right.
If you want to recruit new people, and everybody's like, well, I took 2 or 3 kids. I'm like, well, here's the deal. Take their parent, take a dad. They all want to do it. Think about getting a kid fired up. If they don't have a driver's license, they're not independent. They can't go back without you. And all people need to do is it requires a lot of time. It's like, you know what? I know Sam. He lives right down the thing. He wants to. I know he wants to go. I'm gonna take him. And you may have to take him 3, 4, 5 times, explain all this stuff to him. But it goes back to that, you can feed a guy a fish for one day with a fish or teach him how to fish and all that. But it's like that requires a lot of time. But so many people, they want to have the pickup truck with all those decals in the back that says Bear Archery or Mossy Oak or whatever it is. They just don't know how to do it. Mm-hmm. So the way you do that, you got to train them, and that takes a commitment. But you think about it, if everybody did that just one time, we would double our numbers like in one season. Damn, and that's what we need. And that's another reason I love bear. I mean, the bear bow I got, the gamekeeper, rigged out. I mean, everything on it was like $500-something. I'm like, golly, that's what we need to be focusing on. I mean, it's hard to get a 15-year-old kid. He starts looking at this bow and that bow and everything, and you look down at the price, and it's $1,200, it's $1,600, and all that. And it's like, I kind of think we need to focus a little bit the other way. I think Bear gets that. I'm not an archery expert. I don't know who's doing what, but I know that one I got is like, I don't know I could shoot any better. It can certainly outshoot me, because I'm 71 years old. But it's like we need to do more stuff to encourage other people, because one day, I don't know if I'll be alive to see it, if it comes down to a referendum at the voting booth, I want that middle. There's like 10 million people adamantly opposed and 16 million that hunt. Well, there's 350 million in the middle with no opinion. I want those people to think, man, those hunters are doing a good job. They're good folks.
You're absolutely right.
So,
you're 100% right.
That's right. You want to do one thing, train somebody. And that's a commitment. But, that's what it's going to take. It ain't like golf. You want to get into golf, you can go get a lesson. 30 minutes, $30. Can't do that with what we do. It's a little more time consuming than that. Right.
Yeah. Now, I want to ask you before we go, being that you've kind of seen it from start to finish, or not start to finish, start to where we're at, how have you seen the camo game change over all your years?
Oh, it's, I sometimes I don't get many bad comments on any of my social media. I guess I have a friendly crowd, but I'll get a little aggravated from time to time because people seem to think that the price tag on the camo makes it effective, and it don't. Because I saw Toxie from the get-go, and I don't know if you've heard the story. He actually went to the fabric guy with baggies full of sticks and limbs and dirt and all that kind of stuff, getting it. And I'm going to just tell you, I don't care who you listen to, because you can watch TV or you can watch a clip on your phone. You don't know how much editing went into that. They might have went on 100 trips to get a deer that didn't spot them in some goofy looking camouflage. But blending in matters, especially for archery guys. turkey hunters, trappers, duck hunters, predator hunters. It works. It really does. And I hate to see people think, well, I'm going to go get the latest and greatest because so-and-so's wearing it. Because I'm telling you, it's like I made a post yesterday. I was up in a tree and all the cover's gone from where I was. And I took a piece of Mossy Oak material and put it behind me. And I was like, man, all the cover's gone, but I always carried a little bit because back cover's better than no cover. All that matters. And I just want people to be successful. And our strategy, if you want to call it that, has never changed at Mossy Oak. It's bottomland's the number one selling pattern there is. It's certainly number one here. It's huge, and that was the first thing Toxie did.
These are my nicest shoes I have right here.
Yeah,
the bottomland Hey Dudes.
Just like my grandkids, it's not because I work here. They're not going unless they wear bottomland. And it's because of the colors are perfect. It blends in well. And if you get busted enough, you'll understand how important real camouflage is, not something that you see on TV or the Instagram guys wearing or this influencer's wearing this and that. And it's like, hey, blending in and staying hidden's a big deal. So we've never really changed here at Mossy Oak. It's been fun, and it's still doing great. I just get the biggest kick out of seeing bottomland everywhere. And, Hardy, the country music singer, just rolled out that song, Bury Me in Bottomland. We didn't pay him for that. I mean, he just did it. And it's like, it's hard. It's hard to build a brand like that if you hadn't been doing what people like for 40 years. It'll be 40 years at the NWTF this year. And I'm very proud of that.
Yeah. That that is, I'm actually looking at my favorite pattern right now is the I'm going to say it wrong, Terragila. I don't know if it's H or G. Spell with a G, but I don't know. But that's one of my favorite patterns right now. So Mossy Oak has kind of made the cooler, more abstract camos with that pattern. And again, it's a really sexy pattern. And I'll tell you why I like that. And here's what I would encourage people to do when it comes to camo. Change your camo as the seasons go on.
Blend in.
I've got my favorite pattern of all time, and that's bottomland, like a lot of people. But again, that Terra where I hunt, man, in Kansas, we've got one tree line. You're hunting on one tree row. So if you look up at the trees, there's a lot of sunlight coming through there.
Yeah.
So you want a lighter, more open pattern, that has more white spots in it. Because again, as that deer looks up, if there's a solid blob of dark camo, now you stand out. Whereas if you're tucking yourself into the thick hardwoods, you don't want a bunch of light open spots on your camo. So change your patterns as you go. I mean, there's too many people that I know of that are like, well, all I wear is this pattern. Well, what happens if you travel somewhere and that pattern don't blend in? Well, it still breaks up my silhouette, but does it? Like if your silhouette is broken up, but it's broken up differently than everything else around it, like you still stick out and the deer can still see your silhouette because the pattern looks different, So I would just encourage people, like, don't get dead set on one pattern. As the seasons change, during early season, you need a darker pattern because there's a lot more cover behind you. And then as the leaves fall and it's a lot more open and you look up and you realize like, oh, you can see the sky a lot more through there. You need to lighten your pattern up. You need more open white spaces in your pattern. So notice those things. I don't know how much you follow, like, I don't want to say pop culture, but I'm sure your grandkids have probably, seen and been around it, but that old school faded cotton camo is like back. Like it's the cool thing now.
Yeah. There's all kinds of sites selling vintage camo. There's like 10 different. Well, you go to TikTok, there's like 360 of them. They're all selling old school camouflage. And that's what young people want. It's crazy. Here's the deal with camo. Here's what I see. And this is coming from somebody that's been busted more times than you can imagine, trying to film these deer and turkeys where I live. Let me just tell you something. They're next level. And I know everybody will say that. I'm just telling you what's true.
Southern animals have a different tick about it because they get shot at by every redneck in the country.
Where people miss the boat for me is they don't worry about their hands and their face. And that's the two things that's going to be moving when you're trying to get your bow drawn or make a call with a turkey and all that. A lot of patterns will work, but you got to have those hands and that face covered. I had my face covered in face paint yesterday, and it was 40 degrees, and it took me 20 minutes to get it washed off. But it's like I'm just so careful with that stuff. But some of that, here's another thing with the old school. And I'm way past. I'm a boomer. I don't even know how you gauge stuff going back. But I'm around my grandkids a lot, and even the young ones and their buddies. And I think that whatever the age is, 13 to 20 years old, I think they are way smarter than we ever were. I think maybe it's because they've had those phones in their hand. They've had access to so much info. But, buddy, their cheese meter goes off quick. And they like solid stuff. They like great advice from somebody that's got a little gray in their beard that's not trying to sell them something. So I got a lot of faith in moving forward with this whole camouflage, hunting, politics, and all that. I think this next group coming up, and I don't know what you call them in that age group, I think they're really smart, and they like that old school stuff. It gives them something to hold on to. Now,
not only are they smart,
the cameraman's opinion. So
not only are they smart, but here's the thing about that generation, and that's why I like the Charlie Kirk Turning Point USA movement. That's why it was so big with the culture that is right now. Because not only are they smart, but they want to know why. Like they don't, my generation, the millennials, millenniums is a good tree stand. Millennials is my generation. We didn't want to know why. Like, that's where the saying, everybody wants the sausage, but don't want to know how it's made. That was our mindset. Like, just tell us what to do and how to do it. And that's why you got a bunch of millennials walking around wearing skinny jeans and, spending $8 on a coffee every day. Like, because they just did what they were, well, this is what culture says we're supposed to do. And they never ask questions. They never said, but why? They never said, but what's the reasoning behind it? They never, they just, hunting is bad. Okay. Hunting is bad. Killing is bad. We'll be vegans, skipping breakfast, intermittent fasting is healthy. We won't eat breakfast no more. They just did it. But the generation now that you're talking about wants to know why. Like, don't just tell me something. Tell me
That's
why.
Right.
Like, show me the proof behind it. Show me the reasoning behind it. Show me, give me conclusive evidence as to why. And like you said, it is very, very encouraging. We're seeing a turn in this generation for the good. And I'm not even talking hunting, but I'm talking, a generational turn back to Christ.
Yes, sir.
A revival in that age group. We're seeing, a more open-mindedness towards hunting, and don't tell me to go hunting, but tell me why. Like, what role does it play in the benefit of these animals? Like, show me those things. And it is really, really encouraging. I mean, as a right-wing conservationist and a hunter and an outdoorsman, it is very encouraging on all fronts. I mean, it really is.
Yeah, I got a lot of faith in them. The other day at Thanksgiving, my wife prepped for 2 days. She's an amazing person and a wonderful cook. I just did the turkey. We get ready, and everybody's standing there, and I just turned around and said, "Who wants to say the blessing?" And all 4 of my grandkids raised their hand at one time. I'm like, wow, how cool is that? They get it. They like stuff with substance. I was watching my middle grandson. He was looking at a YouTube. I said, "Who is that?" "Oh, it's so-and-so. He's the best at sharpening axes and knives." And I said, "Well, why'd you end up on him?" He said, "He's not trying to sell me anything." And he turned around to walk off, and he looked back and he said, "Plus, he's got some gray in his beard. He's been there." I'm like, well, good for you for finding somebody like that. And I got a lot of faith in them. They can quote you good stuff from Pittman Robertson. They know why they hunt. And, my oldest grandchild, she's working on her doctorate now, but she didn't want to go hunting at all till late. Matter of fact, last year's first year, she killed a deer. She killed a 9-point sitting with me with a crossbow in December in Mississippi, which was a miracle. And, man, she had that thing cut up like she wanted to, and she was out there hunting again Thanksgiving because she again had to take her own path, but she gets it now. And you're right, they want to know why. And not just, they're not buying the skinny jeans because they look good. They're asking questions. I'm pretty excited about that. So you're dead on.
I've even seen it with my 14-year-old, again, you talk to people my age and they're just like, no, we don't hunt. Nope. Killing is bad. You're a terrible person. And they'll say god awful things, threaten my family because I hunt. Like, I mean, that's sort of sick and twisted. Just nope. Hunting is wrong. There's no discussion about it, but with my 14-year-old, it's like, Dad, tell me why. Like, why do you hunt? And once you start to, trigger that inquisitive mind, and you like, this is how I put it to her when she asked me that question. I said, well, sweetheart, what would happen if we let somebody move into our house and live with us? Nothing really. Like, I mean, you're right. We have a guest room. We have an extra bathroom. We could afford to feed an extra person. What would happen if we let a whole other family, 3 other kids move in? I mean, they could stay in the basement, I guess, live in the basement and there's a bathroom down there, and we could probably make it. You're right. There would be some tension, but we could probably make it. There would be some fighting and some fighting over space and some arguing over food. And, there would be a little bit of that. But what happens if we invite 12 people to move in? Well, there's no way, Dad. We don't have enough room. You're right. We would start getting sick. We would start running out of food. There would be, disease would run rampant because we'd be in too close of proximity to each other. We would fight constantly. We would, probably end up killing each other. I mean, let's be honest. And I said, that's why we as hunters go out and hunt, because if too many deer are on the landscape, bad things happen. If our property out there that we go and hunt on, if it gets too many deer, they start getting too many diseases. There's not enough food to support them all. There's not enough shelters to support them all. They're dying sick and cruel deaths because of diseases. And that she was like, oh, okay, that's starting to make sense. I get it now. It was registering her. And so again, and it was just the most simple of pictures that you could paint. But again, they have such an inquisitive mind, and it's not just like, okay, well, social media tells me hunting is bad. Tell me the good of it. And they want that debate. They want to figure out, they want the information from both sides and to see it. And like you said, it is encouraging.
Yeah. And the people that are telling you're a terrible person for hunting, they'll be the first one to go through the drive-thru at McDonald's and get a bag of cheeseburgers. They're just being hypocrites. And I don't see much of that in this next generation. You're right. They're asking the tough questions, and I enjoy that. So I personally think the future's bright, but we'll see.
So for the non-hunters out there you're not listening to the show, so I guess I should say for those who talk to a lot of non-hunters, we have to get them to understand that in order for something to live, something has to die. Like if the deer want to live, something is dying. If the coyotes want to live, something is dying. If the bears want to live, something is dying. If we as humans want to continue to live, something is dying. I don't care if you're eating salads. Something is dying for you to get the salad.
Yeah, that's right.
That's the way of life.
Yeah, if you want protein, something's going to die. And most people are level-headed. It's just we need to do a better self of. I tell everybody, read the Pittman Robertson Act so you'll know where all that. I had a lady get on me at the Albuquerque airport one time. I was sitting there waiting on a flight. We'd been trying to film an elk hunt unsuccessfully. And I must have had Mossy Oak pants on or something. And she looked at me, she said, have you been hunting? Yes, ma'am. And buddy, she lit in 7, 8, 9 minutes of just telling me how bad that was. And I was, yes, ma'am, I'm a good Southern boy. Yes, ma'am, I get it. And when she got through, I said, hey, I understand. How long have you been vegan? And she said, what? I said, I'm assuming you don't eat meat. Well, yes, I eat meat. I said, so it's okay for him to kill a steer with a wooden stake out of an air gun. And so you can go to McDonald's. And she looked me straight in the eye and she said, well, that's different. So you're never going to change those people's mind, but they're kind of aging out. And this next group come and get, man, you better have your facts straight. But that's what the best thing a hunter can do is arm himself with some facts. Hey, if the best thing you want, if you want to help wildlife, buy a hunting license, whether you go or not, because that's where the money comes from.
Yeah. I almost exact same picture. I sat down on a plane and this lady says, where are you headed? And I said, I'm going to the ATA show, the Archery Trade Association. She said, what is that? So I kind of told her what I do and how I do it. And again, she went off on me and I said, ma'am, I stopped her. I said, before we have this conversation, can I tell you something? And she said, well, sure. And I said, I just wanted to tell you a little bit about me. I said, I'm a pastor of a church. My wife is a school teacher. I've got 3 beautiful kids. Look, here's a picture of them. I've got a son and 2 daughters. I said, my son, he plays football. My daughter, she's on the volleyball team. My middle daughter's a cheerleader. But again, there's this disconnect of like, we're unhuman and we're just some bloodthirsty killers. And so I said, that's all I wanted to share with you. Now go on. But she kind of looked at me like, you're a real person. Like you're not, you don't just live out in the woods and, you're not just killing stuff for fun. Like, and I even started showing her pictures. I'm like, oh, look at this pizza we made. That's bear pepperoni. That bear I killed, we made pepperoni out of that. My kids got to make homemade pizzas with it. And she's like, kind of in like, okay, like you're not just out there like and killing stuff for fun and, running around like a wild banshee with a spear and a bow. Like, you're a normal person and you're using this meat to feed your family. And then like the conversation went a whole lot different. Now she was still against hunting. But I used the exact same argument you use of like, hey, if you ain't a vegan, I don't even want to have this conversation with you. Like if you're okay with eating burgers and chicken strips, but you're not okay with me, killing my own food, like we don't even need to talk. I mean, you're just twisted in the head.
There's a lot of good stuff going on right now. And I mean, I'm not a big Joe Rogan fan, but he's so powerful and he talks about bow hunting all the time. Anything you can do to break down that woke wall, and which is kind of coming down, it's like that's a good thing. Back, I say 30 years ago, 35 years ago, when I was getting started, there was a lot of anti-hunting animal rights people, and you don't really see that much of it anymore. I don't. It was way a bigger deal. Now we got way bigger fish to fry with all that's going on. But what hunters need to do is just, arm themselves with facts. Now, we don't all have the memory or the talent of Ted Nugent, but you can arm yourself with some facts and be ready to have the argument. I welcome the argument anytime, any place. I just don't have them that often. So.
Yeah, you're 100% right, man. And I do want to wrap this up, but I oftentimes have said, like, just the same way we as Christians need to be able to defend our faith and why we believe what we believe, same way for hunters. Like, you need to be able to talk about these things. Mm-hmm. And, Peter Churchborn wrote a beautiful book, How to Talk About Hunting. And I don't encourage the general public to read it. Honestly, it's a lot of stats and a lot of numbers and a lot of but I would encourage you to like highlight some things and learn some talking points to how to talk about hunting to a non-hunting public. Because again, we need to be able to have those conversations without just saying like, well, yeah, you're stupid. I mean, I like to kill stuff. We need to be able to speak as to, what role we play in conservation, how the money that we use, the Pittman Robertson Acts, and how, how that money goes towards animals. And we need to be able to speak about these things and show people the full story, as not just like, well, I went out and shot this big old buck. But what happened after that was I took the meat and I donated 40 pounds to the local food bank to feed hungry families. And I took the rest, and my kids, we made these pepperoni sticks, and my kids made deer chili, and my kids, we did a potluck at church, and we got to feed the entire church with chili. And I mean, show them the full picture of the role that we as hunters play, the conservation piece, the field to fork aspect of it. I mean, show them all of that, and be able to speak about it without losing your cool, and, being able to speak about it clearly and effectively.
That's right. Arm yourself with facts. That's all you got to do. Because it's like Ted Nugent says, they ain't doing it in France, and it's perfect, whether you like it or not. If you're getting protein, something's dying. So, yeah.
Before we go, what as we move into late season, what's your number one tip for the hunter to be more successful in the late season?
Well, you got to break that down if you're bow hunting or gun. Bow hunting's a different deal. And that's what I like to do. And does your success rate go down? It really does. In Mississippi, our rut is around Christmas where I live, up in the north part of the state. And the hardest thing for guys and gals, whoever, to do is to kind of leave their best spots alone and don't keep going in there in October, November, 2 or 3 times a week, you kind of got to let them spots lay, because you don't have to fire a gun or shoot at one and miss it with an arrow to be intrusive. Every time you go in there, you're leaving scent. That's encroachment. So late season, you got to have them spots that hadn't been, just pestered back and forth and back and forth. And if you're bow hunting, you got to find some kind of cover. But here's the deal. Just take your time, make sure the wind's right, keep the wind in your face, and have a good entrance and a good exit. I found that I got 2 or 3 spots on my little farm that have the best entries and the best exits ever without spooking deer. And that's constantly where we kill the best deer or the most deer. So that intrusion's a big, big deal. So that's you look, I got 3 or 4 kids hunting on my place all the time. So I'm always worried about that. The main thing is just get out there and enjoy it and watch them sunsets.
I asked you that question years ago, and you answered it with a tip that I share with maybe more than anyone else I've ever shared another tip with. The orange paint tip. Yeah. Imagine everywhere you touch or walk is orange paint. And then when you get to your tree stand, look back and see how much orange paint's there. I've shared that with everybody, and they're like, I've never thought about it like that. And I'm like, that fence crossing, you got to think. I mean, you're putting your hands on it, you're setting your bow and your bag down, and you're stepping over, and then you're pulling it through. Like, you got to think about how much stuff you just touched in that area. And they're like, I've never even considered that.
Yeah, that's a Barry Winslow tip. But that's all about, look, have a good entrance and a good exit. And, every time you spook them deer leading that food plot, they just goes in that memory bank. So rest a few spots, take your time, make sure that wind's good, have a good entry and a good exit. Yeah, absolutely. Cuz, thank you so much for coming on, man. Where can they find Fistful of Dirt, and where can they follow you on social media? Yeah, Fistful of Dirt's anywhere you get a podcast, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and all that. We just celebrated 300 episodes. I think the one going up tomorrow is 304 or 5, something like that. And it's not hardcore information. We do have some good guests on there from time to time, but it's something that you can listen to with your whole family, just like this podcast. Cuz Strickland, Ronnie Cuz Strickland on Instagram, and Cuz Strickland on Facebook. I even have a TikTok, and it's not your typical TikTok. It doesn't have, I'm not selling anything in the TikTok shop, but it's, I found anywhere I can reach people, because if you're going to reach somebody that's fairly young, you better get your message to their phone. So, Cuz Strickland on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, all that kind of stuff. And I post a little something every day, and I appreciate you letting me say that. But again, it's just trying to recruit more number, just like you're trying to recruit more good Christians to your church. We need to get more hunters involved. So, yeah. Who's your number one? Like, if somebody's going to go listen to one episode, what's your favorite guest you've ever had on? Oh, wow. Man, the one that's downloaded the most, and you can't really go by how many downloads, because most people don't even download your podcast to listen to it. They just click on it. But anyway, the most downloading we have is the first time after Thanksgiving dinner one day. I had my wife, my 2 daughters, and my granddaughter, and I interviewed them about this hunting stuff through their eyes. And that's still to this day probably the most downloaded, the one with the most truth bombs, the one where I learned more than anything, because they have a unique opinion on all that. That would probably be my number one episode is all That's the cool. Ladies. Yeah, it was great. It was a Thanksgiving theme, and it's still very downloaded. Great advice in there. So it's also a dangerous thing to give a bunch of women microphones and let them talk. Yeah, that's dangerous. Tell you what, that's right. You better be ready for the answers, because they're going to tell you what it's about. Yeah. But and then it's recorded forever. And then we've had so many good guests. I've had great people on there, but that, just from a personal standpoint, that's probably my favorite. The first time my son was ever on the podcast, I took him on a bear hunt recently, and I let him share his experience of the bear hunt. He's only 7. He shared the story of the bear hunt. But the first time he was ever on the podcast, I was actually going back. I was actually on the podcast with Chuck Adams, and wow. And we're sitting there, and
Chuck just stops and he's like, points at the camera. And I'm like, what? And I turn, because it crops it. Like, so I'm only seeing, and so he points to the camera and I said, what? And I turned around and my son was stark naked behind me. And he said,
oh, wow.
he was only probably 2 maybe at the time.
Yeah.
And he goes, there's a naked kid behind you. And I turn around, I'm like, oh my gosh, sorry, Chuck.
Oh Lord, that's priceless.
Yeah.
That
it was
is
really
priceless.
funny.
But if you talk
fun.
to Chuck Adams again, tell him I said hello and I'm a big fan. I always have been.
I certainly will.
I won't ask him for one of those beanies. That's the best story of the podcast, the beanie store. So
I would say I'd send you one, but I can't get another one, so I can't send you one.
I'm good. God bless you. That was a great story.
You all know I love arrows. So therefore, I love vanes, and I love trying different vane configurations. I love seeing how they fly, how they tune, how quiet they are. Boning archery makes, in my opinion, the greatest selection of vanes known to man. And for good reason, because they've been making vanes longer than your grandpapa's been alive. They make a phenomenal line of vanes. So whatever you're trying to do, whether you're wanting to shoot paper, 3D, or you're wanting to go out and hunt, whether you're shooting a crossbow, compound, they've got vanes for you. Now, they just recently introduced, in my opinion, the greatest vane of all time, which is the Alpha. It's an all-new design. It's made out of the same stiff material that my previous favorite vane, the Heat vane, is made out of. So it's whisper quiet. It stabilizes your arrow very well. And it's just an all-around great vane. Now, they also just introduced the Atlas, which is the same shape and profile as the Alpha, out of the same classic blazer material. Guys, here's what I'll tell you. Boning simply makes really good products. If you are an arrow tinkerer like me and you want to try a bunch of different vanes, I would highly encourage you to go try out Boning. Some of my favorite vanes are definitely the Heat vane. The Heat vane in a 4-fletch is almost unbeatable, just barely outdone by an Alpha vane in a 3-fletch with a hardcore left helical. That's just money every single time. Guys, go check out Boning, whether you're looking for, longer 4-inch vanes, whether you're looking for micro vanes, they've got something for you. And I promise you it's going to perform every time. Cuz, thank you so much for coming on. Everybody, thank you for listening. Have a fantastic week. Good luck in the late season and keep the dusty side up.